Any health-related information on the following show provides general information only. Content presented on any show by any host or guest should not be substituted for a doctor's advice. Always consult your physician before beginning any new diet, exercise, or treatment program.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Namaste Wellness Show, where we talk about all things holistic health for the mind, body, and spirit, for people and pets with a touch of cultural soul. My name is Laura. Thank you so much for joining me today. Today I have a very special guest, Ginger Wiechers. She is a life coach and a spiritual coach, and she's also the owner and executive director of SOUL, which stands for Source of Universal Love, which is a nonprofit organization. Thank you for being here. Welcome.
Thank you so much for the opportunity.
My pleasure. Okay, so tell us a little bit about what you do as a spiritual coach, a spiritual counselor. Or first, tell us a little bit about your background, how you got started. And
I think I would say that my entire life has been about service to others.
okay.
And it's been a calling on my life. That's the only way I would be able to describe it, right?
Okay.
And so over time, I found myself in positions to like help others.
Okay.
You know, at one point, my mother and I owned a coffee house in West Bloomfield many years ago.
Oh, okay.
And so people from the nearby areas, because it was in West Bloomfield, people from Pontiac and everywhere would come in and they would be asking for food. And so we would give them food. And then after a while, and people always ask me, how do people find you? And the truth is, people in need tell other people in need.
So these were people that were hungry that would come into the coffee shop?
Some of them were homeless, some of
Really?
them, yeah. And you don't think about that necessarily in West Bloomfield.
Right. Yeah.
But you know, I personally am a very faith-filled person, and I believe that God shows them the way to your doorstep.
Right.
So I think they would have found me if I was in Beverly Hills on Rodeo Drive.
Okay.
You know, but
Yeah.
whatever it is, they found their way, and then the need became greater and greater. And my mom and I looked at each other and were like, okay, you know, how can we continue to help? Because then they would be like, we're cold and we need jackets, and you know, different things. And so I went up north for a weekend. And I walked on the beach by myself, and I prayed and I asked God, like, for help. Like, what are you asking of me? Like, how am I meant to serve here? Because there's a growing need. And I heard in my head the word soul.
Oh, okay.
And I said, soul. Well, at the time I was focused in food. I'm like, soul food?
Okay.
You know,
Right.
like, I'm not sure that's it. And then the word source of universal love came to me. And I was like, oh, okay.
Oh.
So I also do real estate. So I went to my real estate attorney the following Monday, and he's like, how was your weekend? And I said, well, do you really want to know? And he said, sure, of course. So I told him, and I said, I think it's meant to be a nonprofit.
Okay.
And it happened, and because we had done business together, I never realized the scope of like his charitable endeavors.
Oh,
he was one of the founders of Gleaners, and he had a list of amazing accomplishments,
and you had no idea.
No idea.
Wow.
And he was so humble and would never say anything like where the focus and attention was on himself. So again, for me, it was God positioning him in my life for a time such as that. And so he said, well, I'll be your attorney for the nonprofit and I'll create it and I'll stick with you. And to this day,
Yes.
20 plus years later, he's still there.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And it's been an amazing journey. So that's how that began. And so the nonprofit became a vehicle
Mhm.
to serve people and their needs. And that's everything from food to household items, clothing,
Mhm.
furniture. We've had the privilege of serving like
Mhm.
Vietnam vets and, just a lot of people. So
Yeah.
if they come to us, we try to find avenues
The
and ways to help,
resources.
even
Okay.
if they're beyond our scope. We're very happy. We play well with others.
Okay,
We
yeah.
we
Uh-huh.
love to network and
Uh-huh.
do good.
Find ways. Okay.
Yeah, so
Wow, I had no idea of the background. Yeah.
mhm.
I know here, so as a person in real estate, is that how you have this whole campus
Mhm.
of holistic services. You have every kind of service here
Mhm.
in terms of holistic health and wellness right here on, I'm calling it a campus, but it's like a,
We refer to it that way.
oh, do you? Okay.
It's beautiful. It's 7 buildings and it's centered around a courtyard.
Mhm.
And so, yes, I have the privilege of working with amazing practitioners, healers.
You have Ayurveda, you have, I
Absolutely.
saw that you have is this education in somatic healing, or is this, I mean, sorry, somatic education in Rolfing?
Yes.
Is that a Rolfer or they teach Rolfing here?
He performs it.
He performs it, okay.
So yes, there's
And-
that. We have 2 chiropractors. We
Mhm.
have 2 hypnotherapists. We have massage therapists.
Mhm.
We have a
Reiki, yeah.
pretty comprehensive list.
Yeah, like I call it a mecca of holistic healing right here.
Mhm.
Yeah. So, yeah, that's awesome.
Mhm.
Even I even rented some space here for a while, but then like
Mhm.
everything got so busy for me. So I wanted to return because the space here is just so, you can tell it's very spiritual. It's very open. You feel so comfortable when you're
Thank
here.
you.
And
And for the record, we're gonna make sure she comes back.
okay.
We want her part of the community always.
Oh, thank you.
You're
And
welcome.
I appreciate that. I mean, and you do, it's such a beautiful place here. And it's kind of like a diamond in the rough, so to speak. You come in, you don't see the beauty of it until you really get inside,
Oh,
you know.
thank you.
And so I really appreciate you letting me come and talk to you. I apologize. I know the lighting is not as good. I forgot to bring my ring light to make things maybe a little sharp, the image is a little sharper, but we do have listeners as well as people watching on video. So tell us.
I will segue off of something you just said,
Okay.
because when we lean into spirituality, I always look for like significant things in what someone says.
Okay.
And so you are observing this complex in a way to, like, if you were to observe it from the outside, you would see brick buildings.
Right.
Right. And then as you come into the courtyard, there's a gazebo and trees and places to sit. And as you enter inside the buildings, you find a lot of perhaps peace and beautiful things, right?
Yes.
So that spoke to me spiritually speaking of like, if you they say don't judge the book by the cover, right?
Exactly.
So if you observe buildings, you never know what's
And-
tucked inside.
Exactly.
And it's also true for people, that reminder that if they're different or unusual or however they present, even guarded and defensive, that there's something more inside.
Yeah.
So don't drive on by or walk by that person.
Right.
Find out what's within.
Right. Well, I think that's a beautiful analogy. Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Well, thank you for that.
Yeah, you're welcome.
So tell us a little bit about what you do as a spiritual counselor, coach.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I have a background in education and psychology, and And I feel like psychology is extraordinarily valuable, and the more traditional paths have tremendous value.
Mhm.
But sometimes I find that people reach the end of what that offers, and they still may not be peaceful or settled or resolved. And so if they're open to it, then I think that what I call it is you go in and you go up, right?
Okay,
And I think that's what spirituality is all about.
going inward and to elevate.
Absolutely. And if you relate to God, which I said I do,
Mhm.
then it's connecting with God or the universe or the higher power, whatever your belief and whatever your truth is.
Right.
And I think that you transcend the physical in that way and you access new ways of healing
Mhm.
and reframing things to be able to find your way to what I call personal freedom and liberation
Yeah.
from the bondage of the physicality.
And so I guess when you say bondage of physicality, there's
Mhm.
also an emotional bondage that some people, or
Absolutely.
a mental bondage,
Correct.
because we make up, we're mind, body, spirit, all of it. So there could be spiritual bondage, there could be emotional bondage, there could be physical bondage,
Mhm.
et
And
cetera.
to your point, when I describe being free of the bondage to the physical, this is the way I describe it. It's a spiritual principle.
Okay.
And I say that in the lower layer,
Mhm.
there's the physical,
Okay.
and then there's a veil,
Okay.
and then there's the spiritual realm above that. Okay.
Mhm.
So when I say bondage from the physical, I'm including in the physical all of the different manifestations,
Okay.
be it mental, emotional, physical, all of that, right?
Gotcha. Okay.
So when I say that the veil, people will be, what does that mean? Well, if you believe in spirituality and you believe there's a spiritual realm, there's a separation, and we refer to that as the veil that you get to transcend. So, for example, I'll often say in the physical, things are happening to you. Okay.
Mhm.
Someone may be experiencing a hardship.
Mhm.
It absolutely is happening in the physical. And does it affect them mentally, emotionally, in all ways? Yes,
Okay.
that's very real.
Mhm.
But if you can transcend and you go to the spiritual, the question we then ask is, why is it happening for you? Okay. So whatever's happening in the physical, there's a reason it's happening for you, right?
Not to you.
In the physical, it happens
To
to
you.
you because you want to acknowledge it's real.
Israel.
You're walking through it.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
You're in the trenches possibly, but you're there. So we
Right.
acknowledge that.
Mhm.
But if we can go what I call up to the balcony of
Mhm.
spirituality and look down on it, we can usually find out why it's happening for us.
And how would you do that?
That's a great question. So we would say that the reasons things happen for us is for our growth.
Oh,
Okay.
Mhm.
What lesson can I learn here? Okay.
Mhm.
And when I look at the lesson, like, why am I learning this? How can I evolve from this?
Okay.
And so that's how it happens for you. Okay. So, for example, if you're comfortable,
Mhm.
what is something like a challenging something that you might be facing or have faced in recent times? Just give me an example.
Oh, wow. Oh, I don't know. And they say, oh, that's kind of put me on the spot. Recent times.
Or somebody and have
um,
observed. It doesn't have to be yourself.
Maybe, just feeling overwhelmed
Okay.
with, so many things to do, and you're feeling like you're being pulled in so many directions and you're kind of lost focus on exactly why are you doing all this, or what is it all
Absolutely.
for? I mean, I don't know if that's a good
That's a
example.
great example. And I think that a lot of your listeners can relate to that because it's a very common feeling right now.
Mm.
And people frequently share that with me, that they have so many demands and so many things on their plate, like their to-do list of 200 items, never, you check off a big two
Right.
and 4 get added.
Right.
So that's a common thing that people are feeling. Now, we would validate that by saying in the physical, that's real.
Yeah.
You know, that is real. You absolutely, if you told me the details of it, I'm sure it's quite a lot because you're an
Yeah.
ambitious woman, right?
Right. And I was just thinking when I said that, I was like, well, I guess these are things that I'm choosing to do. So I'm kind of putting it on
Mhm.
myself.
That is true. That is true. And so in looking at it, you had a very good reflection there,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
You know, like, for example, you're aware that sort of I create my schedule.
Right.
Therefore, this is happening to me, and it's a self-creation.
Right.
And the powerful piece of that is understanding that you're not a victim of being overwhelmed.
Mhm.
You, in fact, recognize that you create the schedule of your life.
Right.
Therefore, you have control over it,
Right.
which takes you out of the overwhelmed into a place of empowerment.
Oh, I
Right?
like that.
So
Yeah.
if you're empowered and you go, well, actually, I create my schedule
Uh-huh.
or design my life,
Right.
then I can alter it.
But what about the people that say, oh, it's not that easy?
Right. So I would say to that, what's not easy? Do you know what I mean? What's not easy about taking a look at this?
Because you have, it's kind of like you've opened a can of worms.
Mhm.
You put so many things out there and
Mhm.
it feels like it becomes a little out of control.
Okay. And
You
I
have too many irons in the fire, as they say.
absolutely, and I refer to that as the snow globe, you know,
Mhm.
and you know, you shake it and then all those little
Yeah.
lovely snowflakes and particles are all
Right.
like flying around. And you
Right.
feel like, oh Lord, could they just all land? But they're not. And so in that place,
Yeah.
it's uncomfortable.
Right.
So to answer your question, for me, what I find is, you know, sometimes people think about spirituality as like out there, like, ooh, you know,
Mhm.
and, you know, I think it's not. I think it's very real, but I also find that blended with, a lot of practical, grounded
Mm.
wisdom and insight is a very nice blend. So if someone shared that with me, I would get out paper and I would say, well, let's write them down.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Then once we identify them,
Mhm.
we would then prioritize. Okay. Well, we
Right.
might look at a few that might just need to be let go because sometimes we take on responsibilities
Mhm.
that we perceive we need to, when in fact, I call that it's not in our lane and we need to get back into our lane, right?
Right.
So sometimes we don't have to take those on. And when we do the inventory, we may find that there are simply things that we need to release.
Right.
Okay. But other things that remain, which can be a lot as well,
Mhm.
we write them down, we prioritize them.
Right.
Because once we prioritize them, then there's some semblance of order. And again, we have a feeling of control over it,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
And when we have control, then we're not going to feel as overwhelmed.
Right.
So sometimes creating the plan for it really is what it needs.
Or taking that practical step.
Yes.
What about like not wanting to say no?
Mhm.
You know, if, for example, if someone that you love, you want to, it's like you don't want to say no because it could be, you don't want to say no because you don't want someone to be mad at you. You don't want to say no because you feel obligated.
Right.
I think that we're in that in the midst of that in our society too. We just feel like we're obligated to do these things because this is something we've always done, or
Right.
someone expects us to do this, and we don't want to hurt. We'd rather hurt our feelings than hurt someone else's feelings.
Absolutely. That, falls a little bit under the people pleaser category.
Mhm.
A lot of us are wired that way. Some are not, but
Yeah.
many are. And to those that are, it can become quite draining
Yeah.
and a very heavy burden.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
The first thing you would do is look at and understand, how did you arrive there? Like, what was the messaging? Did you have a demanding mother or father that maybe was very hard to please and you wanted the love? Okay.
Yeah.
So first you understand where it comes from, if you can. And then that in and of itself is never enough. Okay, good. You know where it came from. How do I deal with the burden that I'm carrying, right? That's when I say you go in and you go inside and you, again, I think it would be very practical to identify by writing it down, like what the relationship is. What do you feel obliged to?
Yeah.
And then the going in piece of it, is it mine to carry? Right? Is this something that's truly in alignment with me? Is it my conditioning?
Yeah.
Or is it my truth? Right?
Right.
If you find you're doing something for someone out of a sense of obligation or fear of rejection or whatever, then I think you need to say to yourself that you have a right and you have a choice. And again, if it's not in alignment with you, that's okay.
So you're saying if it's in alignment with you, because I know some people that I love very much and I admire them because they're, they do things because they want to do it.
Correct.
And they're not going to be manipulated,
right?
Not to do it. And I admire that. But I know I found that I feel bad if I,
But why do you feel that?
Yeah.
For example, what is the reason you feel bad? And they give themselves permission, right?
I think it's a difference in personality. For example, I had a good friend in college. I loved her so much. Her name was Nevia. She passed on, a few years ago. But Nevia could say whatever she wanted to say. And I know people like that.
Yes.
They can say whatever they want to say. And it seems like people love them or it's fine, even though if they say things offensive. You know what I'm saying? There are people that it seems like they can say whatever they want to say. And people, love them and it's okay. There's no problem. But if you speak your mind and it seems, it's like if you, another person, maybe myself, that I might have a difference of opinion and I speak up about it, then I feel like I'm going to be criticized because I'm not seen as that type of person.
Right. So what I would say to that is having the privilege and pleasure of knowing you, okay? If you said what you had to say, okay, truth, okay?
Yeah.
But did it with love and kindness, right? Then you're still that person that you are because you are love and kindness.
Oh, thank you.
It's the truth. But again, I think that, and I've been having a lot of conversations with people lately about people for a lot of reasons being afraid to speak the truth.
Right.
Not wanting to hurt someone's feeling, afraid of reaction, all of that.
Yeah.
And yet I say to them that in those places where you shrink away from the truth and you don't speak it, you create separation in the relationship,
That
right?
makes sense. Yeah.
And at some point, the gap becomes so great that you can't even reside in that relationship any longer, right?
Right.
So how is that helpful and how is that serving?
Right.
It's not. So when we give ourselves permission and we understand that speaking our truth is probably one of the greatest gifts we can offer.
Yeah.
And we know that it's personal requirement to be in alignment with ourselves. And like I said, the key for me is always in love and kindness.
Right.
But if you do that, then the relationship becomes real. You become uncomfortable,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
Depending on how they receive it.
Right.
But I think for me, when I go back always to the inside job, it's like, am I in alignment with myself?
Right. I think that is the key, that if you are in alignment with yourself or in alignment, as I say, with God or source,
Yes.
then, and you're speaking the truth, then people will accept you. But if you're trying to just appease people, that doesn't work.
Well, and they're also not getting the most authentic version
This is true.
of who you are.
Yeah.
Because if you have to shrink,
hmm
then they're not really getting to experience the real you.
Right. Yeah.
Right?
Well, this is true. And I think that's why I really love Nevia, is because she would say, sometimes she'd say the craziest things, but you knew she was being her authentic self.
Right. Right.
And
Which is lovely.
which
Which is lovely. The other
Yeah.
important thing too that I find is, that next piece of it. Say you speak your truth and you get all the courage up and you wrap it in the love and kindness
Right.
and you deliver it, and then someone is wildly reactive.
Right. Yeah.
And then you want to shrink back into like, this is evidence that this is not safe to do this.
Right.
I'm going to keep this to myself. Right?
Exactly. So,
But the truth of the matter is, another principle in spirituality is take nothing personally, right?
That's a good one.
Right, which I
This
love
is
the
true.
4 agreements, and Don Miguel Ruiz talks about one of the 4 agreements is take nothing personally.
Okay.
So
I
basically,
have that little teeny book, those little books you can buy at the bookstore, and I haven't opened it up. But
it's a good one.
okay.
Speak impeccably. Like there's just good things in that book, right?
Okay.
That's one of the principles.
Okay.
But what I would say to you is that piece, the practice is take nothing personally if they react, because it's not about you.
Right.
If you spoke truth, you said that with love and kindness. If that person is reactive, that's about them.
That's about them.
And sometimes we give people an opportunity to be reactive because that's something that they need to work on.
That's true.
That's something they need to heal.
Right.
Because how effective is being reactive to shut down people? It's not really their highest choice.
Right.
So in that moment, as long as you know it's not about you, it comes up for them to look at, are they getting are they getting their needs met by having that reaction? Well, if it happens enough, there might change.
Yeah.
And you could be facilitating the change just by being honest.
That's true.
Right?
This is true.
So you're doing it for you, but inadvertently you're also doing it for them.
To help. Right. Yeah. And that's very interesting. One of my favorite authors, you're probably familiar with the law of attraction.
Oh, yeah.
And one of the things she always talks about is she says one person connected to their source or in alignment is more powerful than, and she said millions who are not connected.
Right.
So how do you feel about that?
Well, I think that if you have one person connected to source, it's like putting the electric cord into the outlet. It's going to light up, right? But if you have a million people who have the cords out there and they're plugged into nothing.
Well, this is true.
How are they going to manifest anything? Because they're not connected.
Right. This is true. Well, that makes sense. It's kind of like as a Bible verse that says, it's like the blind leading the blind. So, we have so many, and I know we're in a group consciousness now. We're no longer in the age of Virgo or a Pisces. Now we're in the age of Aquarius, and so there's a lot of group consciousness going on.
Yeah.
But as you said, if you're not plugged in and you're in a group and the group's not plugged in, you're not going anywhere. Right.
Right.
So,
no one's lighting up.
No one's lighting up, right?
No, there's no brightness there.
Yeah. So I think that it makes sense that we really do. It's important for us to really work on ourselves,
Yeah.
so that when we're in a group, we're offering the best of ourselves.
100%.
And so nothing wrong with the group consciousness, but we have individuals in the group consciousness.
Right.
So I think it's upon the individual to be the best that they can be, so that when, you're offering the best to other people.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that for me includes taking responsibility for yourself and your actions.
Exactly.
And when you do take responsibility, you can show up and make a difference.
Absolutely.
But I find a lot of people spend an inordinate amount of time trying to avoid taking responsibility.
Yeah.
And those would be the people who are looking to another person to say, this is your fault, or this is
the blame game.
The blame
Yeah.
game, exactly.
Mhm.
But going back to it, once you take responsibility for yourself,
Mhm.
profound change can happen in your life. I work with a lot of addiction
Okay.
and young people. And until they're willing to take that responsibility and say that, I have created this and therefore I can fix it, right? And they're going to be in the throes of the addiction.
Right.
But taking that responsibility is the most profound step in affecting change.
Right. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's very important.
Mhm.
Before we get too far or get close to the end,
Yeah.
do you have any contact information that you want to share?
Oh,
And then a little bit about, you said you work with people with substance abuse. You work with all types of conditions. If you want to say a little bit more about that, if you have
thank you.
specialty
Thank you.
or contact information.
Thank you.
Mhm.
I think the best thing, that I suggest to people, my voicemail is almost always full.
Yes, it is. That's why I'll text you.
So
Yeah.
it's true.
Which is a good thing, right?
It's a great thing. It can be frustrating for others, but
Right.
if you text me, that's the best way to reach me at 248-318-6691. That is my personal cell. And that's probably the best way. I do trust that, and I always have, that people who are meant to find their way to me will,
Right, yeah.
and that's a good thing. It is my pleasure. I work with children. I work with people who are in addiction. I work with couples, pretty much anyone who's going through struggles. I think the most important thing that I hear often is from people who have experienced a lot of therapy over a long time.
Really? Okay.
And that traditional therapy.
Right.
And they haven't quite found what they're seeking.
Okay.
So if someone were in that situation and they're willing to go in and go up, or do the work or look deeper, and are looking for something more expansive in addition to the foundational pieces of traditional therapy, then that's probably where my area of personal excellence would lie.
Okay. Now, do you take insurances or is cash?
No.
Oh, okay.
Cash, check, Zelle, but thank you for asking. No insurance.
Okay, because you did mention you're a psychologist, or you have a background in psychology?
I do.
Okay.
I do.
Yeah, and you want to just say a little bit about the difference between coaching and therapy?
Yes. And I mean, that's an individual approach on either side of the equation. But for me, I would say the specific difference is this. I will often recommend, like there's a book, The Highly Sensitive Person, which is one I often recommend.
Okay.
And it has a companion workbook, and it's really, really good. I find that in the time we're living in right now, people are really dealing with a lot of sensory challenges.
Okay.
And so this book can shed a lot of insight into that. If you're a person who's really sensitive to bright lights or loud sounds, okay. So that's a book I recommend. But what I'll do is if I sit with someone and I see that it will benefit, I'll say to them, my recommendation to you is this book. Go and get it.
Okay.
Go through it. We go through it together. You do the work, you bring it in, we can discuss it.
Got it.
Or, and then I'll watch and see how highly motivated they are to follow through on recommendations.
Okay.
So that will tell me like how ready they are to make progress.
Oh, their stage, what stage level?
In readiness.
Yeah.
So there's that. And so for me, I do, if a client wants it, I do give homework. And
Okay.
because I think if someone's really dedicated, well, you go and see someone for an hour and hopefully you take notes and you get what you can out of it. But then there could be a week or two in between. And if you really want to do the work, I can tell you many, many things you can be working on your own.
Okay.
That's not necessarily traditional therapy, but it's more of the life coaching.
Okay.
Sometimes people need encouragement. Sometimes they need a little accountability. And that can be useful. So that's the difference for me and why I lean more into life coaching. I think you can make greater progress if the client is ready for that.
If they're ready. So as a coach, you're working with people who are ready to really work on themselves.
Correct.
Whereas in therapy, it's more
the
they're
deeper
looking for
dives
you
into
to
emotions and all that. And I tell people, you go to the gym and you work out and you repeat things and you get results.
to reach a goal.
Exactly. And I said, you know what, for people who have like their thoughts are running rampant and they're unruly, well, that can be habitual. There's many other reasons, but it can be habitual, but it requires discipline.
Right.
So I'll give them the tools to discipline the mind and practice over and over, repetitions. Well, what happens is the mind becomes more disciplined and they get the result just like muscle would in a physical body if you'll repeat a process over and over.
Or music or anything you're practicing.
100%. Absolutely.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah.
So that was a great question. Thank you for asking.
Absolutely. Okay. So you said the book is for highly sensitive people.
Yes.
You recommend, and you want to say your phone number one more time.
Thank you. 248-318-6691.
And texting is best. So
yes, it is. Thank you so much.
Okay, you're welcome. So thank you so much for being with me today, Ginger. I really enjoyed our conversation. We kind of had a coaching session today. So hopefully my viewers, listeners found it helpful, and feel free to reach out to Ginger if you have any questions or comments, and you can reach out to me at my email. It's namastewellness@outlook.org. And till next time, thank you so much for being here. We'll tune in on Wednesdays at 11 a.m. for the show, w4hc.com, or if you missed the live show, wherever you watch your podcasts at, you can see the show again. So with that being said, thank you for being here. Namaste.
Namaste. Thank you.
You're welcome.